Io sono Monkey D. Luffy e diventerò il re dei pirati.
One Piece live-action series finally premieres. This series, produced by Netflix, boasts a whopping $150 million investment. The manga's creator, Eiichiro Oda, also serves as an executive producer. The story kicks off with the execution of Pirate King Gold Roger in Logtown. The scene is packed with onlookers, including figures like Garp and Mihawk. As Gold Roger meets his demise, he reveals that he's hidden a fabled treasure, One Piece, somewhere in the Grand Line, and encourages people to embark on the quest to find it.
Ricchezza, fama, potere. Ho avuto tutto ciò che il mondo ha da offrire. Liberatevi! Prendete la via del mare! Il mio tesoro è vostro se volete.
Gold Roger is ultimately sentenced to death, but his words ignite a passion for the seas, marking the dawn of the Great Pirate Era. Fast forward 22 years, and in the East Blue, Monkey D. Luffy sets sail in a small boat. His dream? To find One Piece and become the Pirate King. Now Luffy's boat is leaking and he can only hide in a wine barrel and float on the sea. Next, the Alvida pirates make a flashy entrance, led by the infamous Captain Alvida, who's a heartthrob for many. On board is a handsome young man named Kobe, who was abducted and forced into slavery by Alvida. One night, Kobe spots Luffy emerging from a barrel in the ship's hold, leading to an unexpected friendship between the two. Luffy reveals his pirate aspirations and reminisces about his past. 10 years ago, in Windmill Village, Luffy crossed paths with red-haired Shanks and the Red Hair Pirates. Among them were notable figures like Beckman, Yasopp, Lajaloo, and others. Luffy's burning desire to become a pirate led him to implore Shanks to take him out to sea. But Shanks points to the scar on his face and says that sailing means risk. Unexpectedly, Luffy hurt his face to show his determination. Back in the present, Kobe and Luffy inadvertently awaken Alvida. With Luffy's encouragement, Kobe finds the courage to stand up to Alvida, leading to an intense confrontation between the two sides. During the fight, Luffy demonstrates his rubber fruit power and beats Alvida to death.
Basta così.
In the end, Luffy delivers a powerful punch, sending Alvida flying and saving Kobe. On another part of the world, the bounty hunter Zoro finds himself on Sixus Island, where he encounters MR7 of Baroque Works. MR7 extends an invitation to Zoro to join Baroque Works, but Zoro firmly declines and engages in a fierce battle with MR7, ultimately defeating his opponent. The next day, Luffy and Kobe set sail on the open sea. Luffy remembers the origin of the rubber fruit's power. In this world, various mysterious devil fruits grant those who consume them supernatural abilities. However, the price for such power is the inability to swim. Luffy's own powers stem from accidentally consuming the gum-gum fruit that Shanks had acquired. At that moment, the Mountain Bandit King Say walked into the Machino Tavern. His bounty was as high as 8 million belly, and he dared to provoke Shanks. To everyone's surprise, Shanks remained completely unfazed by the Mountain Bandit's taunts. Shanks' cowardly behavior makes his companions laugh. However, Luffy was particularly angry and believed that Shanks should not allow himself to be humiliated. Shanks also noticed that Luffy had consumed the rubber fruit. Fast forward to the present, Luffy learned that Kobe's dream was to become a marine. He took Kobe with him to the town of Seashell, which had a marine base. The town was plastered with numerous wanted posters, including those of Beliars, Fukaroshi, and Bakura. Luffy couldn't help but wonder why he didn't have his own wanted poster. Meanwhile, Nami made her entrance. Nami tricks the pirates into coming to her boat by pretending to ask for help, and then she takes the boat and leaves in style. Next, Luffy, Nami and Zoro arrive at the restaurant in Shell Town. Kabeji also sneaks in. Later, Nami flirted with a marine, while Zoro received a warm welcome from Rika, the daughter of the restaurant owner. Rika accidentally collided with Captain Morgan's son, Helmeppo. Zoro picks up the food that has fallen on the floor and eats it, telling Rika that the food is delicious and asking Helmeppo to apologize. In response, Helmeppo pulled out a weapon, intending to teach Zoro a lesson.
Ma farà male.
In the end, Zoro effortlessly defeated Helmeppo. Nami took the opportunity to knock out a marine and strip him of his clothes. Nami planned to infiltrate the marine base to steal the chart to the Grand Line. Meanwhile, Luffy was impressed by everything Zoro had done. Later, Zoro brought the head of MR7 to Morgan to claim the bounty. Captain Morgan was in charge of the Marine base and ruled with an iron fist on the island. Captain Morgan used the excuse of assaulting Marines to try to arrest Zoro. Then, Morgan threatened Zoro.
Puoi provare ad arrestarmi, ma il tuo marmocchio sarà il primo che ucciderò.
Ehi! Non può parlarmi in questo modo!
Claiming he could make Zoro's life as a bounty hunter miserable. In order to keep his job, Zoro agreed to be tied to a wooden frame for 7 days. The next day, Luffy infiltrated the Marine base to steal the navigation chart. He unexpectedly ran into Zoro and invited him to become his companion. Zoro, in turn, revealed that his dream was to become the world's greatest swordsman and have his name ring throughout the heavens. Subsequently, Luffy helped Zoro to break free, and he ventured deeper into the base to steal the navigation chart, where he encountered Nami. Meanwhile, Helmeppo was proudly brandishing Zoro's sword in his room, not expecting Zoro to suddenly appear.
Hai intenzione di uccidermi?
Oh no. Ho in mente qualcosa di ben peggiore.
Next, Luffy and Nami teamed up. Nami managed to steal Morgan's keys, and together, they grabbed the safe containing the navigation chart. But the Navy discovers their actions, and a battle breaks out. During the battle, Zoro couldn't resist joining in to assist Luffy. Nami used a wooden staff to deal with the regular Marines, while Zoro and Luffy faced off against Morgan. Morgan's big axe is so powerful that it overpowers Zoro and Luffy for a while, and then Zoro finally gets serious about tying his hood.
Ecco come fa a usarla. Gam Gam! Frusta!
And that's how Luffy and Zoro beat Morgan. They and Nami are ready to leave with the safe. Suddenly, Helmeppo appeared with a gun, wanting to arrest Luffy. Sporting a new hairstyle courtesy of Zoro, now Helmeppo is very cocky and wants to make a name for himself.
E sarò un eroe. Potrei anche ricevere una medaglia o qualcosa.
Kobe? Dio che male! Ma è stato anche molto bello.
In the end, Kobe knocked out Helmeppo. Kobe told Luffy that he would stay in Seashell Town to join the Marines. Luffy responded by saying that they would always be friends. Soon after, Luffy set sail with Zoro and Nami. On the other side, the very handsome phone bug makes his appearance. Garp learned that the Straw Hat Pirates were causing trouble in Seashell Town and prepared to capture the pirates. Garp was accompanied by his assistant, Bogard. Garp quickly arrived in Seashell Town and took a liking to the newly enlisted Marine, Kobe. Garp not only punished the corrupt and dictatorial Morgan but also decided to personally lead a team to capture the Straw Hat Pirates. But, upon learning the identity of the Straw Hat Pirates, Garp's expression suddenly changed.
Chi?
Luffy.
Con un cappello di paglia? E hai detto che sono me. È Luffy.
Sì, signore.
Meanwhile, Kabeji reported to Buggy that Luffy had stolen the Grand Line's navigation chart. As a result, Buggy decided to go after the chart.
Quella è la mia mappa. E me la riprenderò.
Back with Luffy's group, Nami used her hearing to open the safe. They finally obtained the navigation chart for the Grand Line. Nami, with her exceptional navigational skills, began to introduce the world to Luffy. There are 4 seas in this world, one in the southeast, one in the northwest and one in the southwest, with the Red Earth Road running through the middle, and the channel perpendicular to the Red Earth continent is the Great Voyage. Along the Great Voyage to find the One Piece. At this time, the sea was suddenly attacked by smoke bombs and all of them were unconscious. Upon awakening, they found themselves in a circus, with the circus owner being none other than the pirate Buggy. Buggy had taken over Orange Town and forced all the residents to become his audience. Buggy then attempted to force Luffy to hand over the navigation chart. He stretched Luffy's body and bound him to a spinning disc. Meanwhile, Kabeji was torturing Zoro in a small room. Zoro had previously killed Kabeji's brother for a bounty. Kabeji ties Zoro to a spinning disc and throws knives at him. Next, Buggy suddenly noticed Luffy's straw hat. This hat was very familiar to Buggy. It had once belonged to Gold Roger and was later passed on to Shanks. It turned out that both Buggy and Shanks had been apprentices on Gold Roger's ship. Shanks had inadvertently caused Buggy to consume the chop fruit, which left Buggy unable to swim and hunt for treasure at sea. As a result, Buggy had held a grudge against Shanks. At this moment, Luffy struggled to break free but was once again rendered unconscious by Buggy's fruit powers. After that, Luffy was locked in the water tank, the tank continuously filled with seawater, rendering Luffy powerless. In this moment, Luffy began to reminisce about his past. In the past, Say had mocked pirates and Shanks in front of Luffy. Luffy, filled with anger, defended Shanks, but he ended up getting kidnapped by Say. Upon learning of this incident, Shanks was furious. He could tolerate insults directed at himself, but he couldn't stand to see his friend harmed. Shanks makes a gesture of shooting to scare the bandits. I didn't expect the red hair pirates to take down all the bandits in just a few moments. Say, terrified, fled to the sea, taking Luffy with him. At that moment, a colossal sea king, the king of the ocean, suddenly appeared. It not only devoured Say but also caused Luffy to fall into the sea. Fortunately, Shanks arrived in time to rescue Luffy and pulled him back onto the ship. However, the ferocious Sea King had its sights set on Shanks and opened its enormous mouth.
Vattene, subito!
No, Shanks, il tuo braccio!
In the end, Shanks managed to scare off the Sea King. Shanks' left arm had been bitten off while saving Luffy, but he didn't seem to mind. Instead, he comforted Luffy. Back in the present, Luffy was on the verge of being drowned by the seawater. Nami uses her lock-picking skills to break free in the nick of time. She then launched a surprise attack on Kabeji from behind. With Zoro's help, they managed to bring Kabeji down. Following that, Nami and Zoro rushed to the circus to rescue Luffy from the water tank. At that moment, Luffy vomited up the navigation chart, and Buggy immediately climbed towards it. Luffy hurriedly retrieved his beloved straw hat. The stage was set for a grand battle. Buggy's split fruit ability allowed him to effortlessly evade and nullify all attacks, leaving Luffy, Zoro, and Nami completely incapable of defeating Buggy. Buggy even unleashed his ultimate move, the Chop Cannon. Just then, Bug breaks Luffy's straw hat. Luffy finally thinks of a way to deal with Buggy. He punched Bug's body parts into a treasure chest and had Nami lock it away. Before long, Buggy had lost most of his body, becoming a comical, miniature version of himself.
Cosa mi avete fatto?
Ti abbiamo ridimensionato.
Il One Piece non sarà mai tuo! Sei soltanto un ragazzo triste, solo e patetico, che indossa il cappello di un altro!
Io so esattamente chi sono. Sono Monkey D. Luffy e diventerò il re dei pirati.
Ehi, no. Aspetta! Bazooka!
In this way, Luffy defeated Buggy and saved Orange Town. Luffy received the gratitude of all the townspeople. Afterward, Luffy set sail, bidding farewell to Orange Town, just as Shanks had once done with Windmill Village in the past. Before leaving, Luffy made a promise to Shanks that he would become the Pirate King one day. In return, Shanks gave Luffy Gold Roger's straw hat, sealing their pact.
Questo cappello è la cosa più preziosa che ho. Ha un valore immenso per me e voglio che lo prenda tu. Quando ci rincontreremo, me lo restituirai. Ma solo dopo che sarai diventato un grande pirata. È la nostra promessa. Fai il bravo, Luffy.
Now that Nami has repaired Luffy's straw hat, she can see that the hat is Luffy's treasure. Luffy then designs a pirate flag, and he names the pirates the Straw Hat Pirates. But the trio discovered that their ship was leaking, so they decided to head to the renowned shipbuilding village, Syrup Village, in search of a new vessel. On the other side, Garp was aboard his dog-headed battleship, pursuing Luffy. Buggy was captured by Karubi, a senior member of the Arlong pirates. In the presence of Arlong, Buggy became extremely submissive. Arlong demanded that Buggy take him to find Luffy. Next, Luffy arrived at Syrup Village and saw a ship with a sheep's head emblem that he particularly liked. At the shipyard, Luffy met Usopp. Usopp was known for frequently fibbing about pirates arriving, which had led the villagers to distrust his claims. Usopp then took Luffy to the mansion of the wealthy Kaya. Kaya was the owner of the shipyard. She lived in a castle with a gentle and caring butler and a pair of loyal siblings who were cat people servants. The butler had a habit of adjusting his glasses with his palm. In fact, Usopp likes to brag, and he often makes up adventure stories to amuse Kaya. However, Kaya's health was fragile, and she required special medicine. Unbeknownst to Kaya, the butler and the two siblings had been poisoning her, with plans to seize her wealth. Today was Kaya's coming-of-age day, when she would inherit her parents' shipyard with the assistance of her lawyer, Mary. The butler also plans to kill Kaya tonight. In the evening, the butler initiated his plan. He found Mary and demanded that Mary hand over the shipyard to him. Since Mary refused, the butler's true intentions quickly became evident.
Grador? Non tollererò tutto questo per molto.
On the other side, Zoro unexpectedly got lost inside Kaya's house. Luckily, he encountered Luffy, and Zoro followed Luffy to the kitchen to find some sake. In the kitchen, Luffy learned that Usopp's father was Yasopp and mentioned that he had seen Yasopp and the Red Hair Pirates. Simultaneously, Nami stumbled into Kaya's room while attempting to steal. She became friends with Kaya and stopped stealing from her. A series of unexpected events unfolded. First, Luffy accidentally ingested the poison that the butler had prepared for Kaya, leading to his collapse. Then, Zoro and Usopp discovered Mary's lifeless body, and Zoro also uncovered the butler's true identity as Kuro, the captain of the Black Cat Pirates. So Zoro left behind to break the back so that Usopp could go and get help. However, Zoro was ambushed and knocked unconscious by the cat siblings. The cat siblings, mistakenly believing that Zoro was dead, threw him into a well. Meanwhile, Usopp returned to the village and cried out that pirates had arrived, but none of the villagers believed him. In reality, Usopp had previously cried wolf about pirate sightings to comfort his seriously ill mother. Since his father had left to become a pirate, Usopp shouted every day that the pirates were coming to restore his mother's health. Usopp hoped that his mother would get better when she heard that his father had returned, but in the end, she passed away. Back to the present, Usopp is in despair when Kobe appears at his side. Garp's battleship arrived near Syrup Village. Kobe and Helmeppo were dispatched to locate Luffy. Usopp promptly revealed Kuro's conspiracy to Kobe, who led a team to investigate Kaya's house. However, Helmeppo didn't believe Usopp's claims. Kuro, using his smooth talk, managed to deceive Kobe and even handed over the poisoned Luffy to him. Ultimately, Kobe couldn't proceed with the investigation. Usopp, realizing the dire situation, went to find Kaya and informed her of Kuro's plot. However, Kaya didn't believe him and even slapped him, but Usopp didn't give up. He decided to stay in her room to protect her. Meanwhile, Nami overheard Kuro's conspiracy in the kitchen and joined Kaya's room to help protect her. Currently, Kuro had sealed off the entire castle and was determined to catch his prey. Striking a pose of confidence, next, Kuro and Kaya played a game of cat and mouse within the castle. The castle had secret passages that allowed Kaya to hide. On the other hand, Zoro tries to climb out of the well without success, and he can't help remembering his past. As a child, Zoro had trained in swordsmanship under Koshiro. At that time, he practiced the two-sword style but could never defeat Koshiro's daughter, Kuina. Initially rivals, they later became close friends and made a pact to become the world's greatest swordsman. However, tragedy struck when Kuina tragically fell down the stairs and passed away. This led Zoro to inherit Kuina's sword, Wado Ikemanji, as he tearfully swore to carry on her spirit and become the world's greatest swordsman. From then on, Zoro went from a double sword string to a three-sword style. Back in the present, remembering Kuina, Zoro finally breaks out and climbs out of the dry well with his bare hands. Simultaneously, on the road, Luffy finally regurgitated the poison he had ingested and woke up. Luffy tells Kobe about Kuro's plot, but Helmeppo doesn't believe him and takes out his pistol to arrest Luffy. In this critical moment,
Ciao, caschetto.
Zoro!
Zoro happened to pass by and knocked out Helmeppo, while Kobe released Luffy, allowing him to go save Kaya. On the other hand, Kuro captures Kaya and Nami after a lot of trouble. Fortunately, Usopp used his slingshot to shoot at Kuro, rescuing Kaya and Nami. Meanwhile, Zoro and Luffy arrived at the castle. Zoro took on the cat siblings and effortlessly defeated them. While Luffy engaged in a showdown with Kuro, Kuro's ultimate technique involved his cat-like claws and incredible speed. But Luffy is able to hear Kuro's voice and hit him. He grabs Kuro's hands and uses the fat head sledgehammer.
Gum! Gambana!
With this, Luffy defeats Kuro and saves Kaya. Kaya also gives Luffy a sheep's head boat to commemorate Mary's death. The crew decided to name the ship the Going Merry. Luffy also extended an invitation to Usopp to join the Straw Hat Pirates. Despite Usopp's initial concerns for Kaya's well-being, encouraged by Kaya's heartfelt support, Usopp decided to set sail with the crew. The Straw Hat Pirates set sail once again on the Going Merry, continuing their adventures together. Inside the Going Merry, each crew member had their own room. Usopp also shows off his artistic talents by designing a pirate flag.
Utilizzando il mio impareggiabile talento artistico, ho realizzato un nuovo Jolly Roger per la nave. Ta-da!
But of course Luffy doesn't accept it. Suddenly, Garp arrived in his doghead warship and launched an artillery bombardment at the Going Merry. In response, Luffy involuntarily called out to his grandfather. It turned out that Garp was Luffy's biological grandfather.
No.
When Luffy was a child, Garp had hoped to groom him to become a marine, but someone had influenced Luffy to aspire to be a pirate. Now, Garp's cannon firepower was astonishing, but Luffy used his special move to deflect the cannonball. Eventually, Luffy's counterattack damaged the ship's sails, allowing the Going Merry to escape Garp's pursuit. Afterward, Luffy and his crew unexpectedly arrived at the Baratai, a floating restaurant on the sea. The restaurant's owner was Zeph, and it had a skilled chef named Sanji. However, Sanji often cooked dishes not on the menu and was punished to work as a waiter. Sanji's legwork is so good that he can easily handle a small storm in a restaurant. He also met Luffy and his gang. Whenever he saw Nami, Sanji couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and be captivated by her. On the other hand, Garp's ship needs time to be repaired, so he calls someone to help him catch Luffy. The person he contacted was Hawkeye Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman and one of the 7 warlords of the sea, a group of powerful pirates authorized by the government. At the moment, Mihawk is fighting on the Great Voyage. His sword skills are terrifying. His masterstroke is a 2-part sword, the Great Black Sword Knight.
Un momento.
Ora basta!
Temo che sia ora di finirla.
Hai ucciso i miei uomini, distrutto la mia flotta. Che cosa ti ho fatto?
Mi hai svegliato dal pisolino.
Allora ti rimetto a nanna per sempre!
duello finale molto deludente.
Mihawk single-handedly annihilated the Krieg pirates. Mihawk also promised Garp to capture Luffy. Meanwhile, Luffy, due to eating a massive meal without paying, was left behind in the restaurant to do odd jobs. However, he greatly appreciated Sanji's culinary skills. Sanji also told one of his 2 dreams. He wants to find All Blue, the mecca for chefs, which has all the ingredients of the 4 seas. Later, Sanji meets Jin, the only survivor of the Krieg pirates, and he often makes fried rice for the hungry Jin. Sanji has the principle of a chef not to let others starve to death. Luffy sees this and approves of Sanji even more and tries to get him on board. On the other hand, Nami is very confused. She likes the atmosphere of Straw Hat Pirates very much and wants to stay here, but Nami still carries other responsibilities or burdens. She purchased a ticket and planned to travel to her homeland alone. Later, Mihawk arrived at the Baratai. Upon seeing him, Zoro immediately challenged Mihawk. As it was revealed that Mihawk was Zoro's ultimate goal on his journey, Mihawk agreed to Zoro's challenge and promised to duel with him the next day. The night passed quickly, and morning arrived. At this moment, Zoro and Mihawk stood on a platform, ready to commence their duel. It's surprising that Mihawk only uses a small knife attached to his necklace, yet his strength overwhelms Zoro. He is capable of engaging in battles using just that small knife.
Non direi. Sei forte. Ma combattere non è solo questione di forza.
Smetti di parlare e combatti!
Sei come una piccola rana che gracchia in un pozzo. Cra, cra, cra.
After a few rounds of fighting, Zoro was completely outclassed and decides to fight Mihawk in one move. Mihawk also holds a black knife as a sign of respect. In the end, Zoro was defeated by Mihawk, and he opened his arms for Mihawk to give him one last cut.
Sono la più grande vergogna per uno spadaccino.
Magnifico.
Mihawk had shown mercy, and he encouraged Zoro to train hard and strive to surpass him on the seas. Regarding Luffy's dream of becoming the Pirate King, Mihawk also expressed his acknowledgement before leaving, having given up on capturing Luffy. At this moment, Zoro slowly raises the Wado Ikemanji and swears to Luffy.
Adesso diventerò il più grande spadaccino. Non perderò mai più!
Next, Mihawk arrives on Garp's ship, where he refuses Garp's commission to his face and leaves in style. So Garp decided to arrest Luffy himself. Among the crew, only Zeph had some medical knowledge, and he reluctantly stitched Zoro's wounds. Nami chose to stay behind to look after Zoro, keeping him company during his unconscious state, and she tells Zoro stories. Zoro remained in a coma. This is where Luffy shows his captaincy by cleaning Zoro's Wado Ikemanji and preparing food for Zoro when he wakes up. As a captain, Luffy has the responsibility to take care of everyone. Sanji holds a great admiration for Luffy, and as a result, he shares his story with him about himself and Zeph. It turned out that Zeph was once a pirate captain. One day, they attempted to rob a ship, and Sanji was the chef on board. However, they encountered a storm and ended up stranded on a rocky outcrop. With limited food supplies, Zeph gave Sanji a small portion, reserving a large one for himself, claiming it was an adult's portion. They spent 70 days on the outcrop, and as Sanji finished his meager rations, he decided to steal Zeph's portion. To his surprise, Zeph's bag contained treasure, and Zeph had lost a leg during their ordeal. Zeph had sacrificed his food to save Sanji's life.
Io ho cercato il grande blu per tutta la vita, ma ora il mio tempo è scaduto. Noi condividiamo lo stesso sogno. Devi credermi. Il grande blu esiste.
Entrusting his dream of finding the all blue to him, 80 days later, they were rescued, and from that moment on, they all realized how precious food is. Back in the present, Arlong the fisherman arrives at the sea restaurant with 2 of his cadres, and his goal is to grab Luffy's charts. Arlong is the most powerful pirate in the East China Sea. With a bounty of 20 million belly, Arlong was able to find Luffy because the buggy's ears were glued to Luffy's straw hat. Following that, Arlong threatened Luffy, demanding the navigational chart, or he would destroy the Baratai. Even Zeph, the head chef, fell to the ruthless officer Karubi. Seeing this, Sanji stepped up to confront Karubi and was met with a powerful punch that sent him flying. Luffy, on the other hand, decided to protect the Baratai and face off against Arlong.
Gam Gam!
Unexpectedly, Luffy is at a disadvantage in the fight. Arlong possessed the immense strength and regenerative abilities of a fishman. He resorted to dirty tactics, using seawater to weaken Luffy throughout the fight, putting Luffy's life in grave danger. Just as Luffy was about to be killed by Arlong, Nami took out the charts. Nami agrees to follow Arlong away and tells Arlong to throw Luffy into the sea. Arlong took Nami with him. Luffy, who fell into the sea, was rescued by Sanji. After the incident, Zeph pretended to find fault with Sanji's job performance and urged him to leave quickly with Luffy. Meanwhile, the loss of Nami has left Luffy emotionally drained, and he comes to the unconscious Zoro with a forced smile and talk. Surprisingly, his words helped Zoro regain consciousness. Zoro swore to Luffy that he would always protect him. Luffy made the decision to go after Nami. As they departed, Sanji willingly requested to join the Straw Hat Pirates, to which Luffy excitedly agreed. Only Zoro's face changed. Then going merry set sail and left the restaurant. Zeph couldn't help but come out to say goodbye to Sanji.
Ehi, Sanji! Vedi di fare attenzione!
Addio, Zeph! Io ti devo la mia vita! Non ti dimenticherò mai, Zeph!
And so Sanji and Zeph said goodbye. Luffy and his crew also relied on Buggy's guidance to make their way to Nami's hometown. Buggy's bodily is still in Arlong Park and he has to follow Luffy's orders. On the other side, Garp arrived at the Baratai to inquire about Luffy's whereabouts. Zeph, deliberately, used the allure of fine cuisine to buy some time. He also informed Garp that the future belonged to the younger generation. However, Garp eventually learned about Luffy's movements from others and immediately led a team to capture him. Meanwhile, Luffy and his crew reached Nami's hometown, Kokoyashi Village. Known for its abundant orange groves, they discovered that Nami had been forced by Arlong to collect tribute from the village. Arlong had dominion over many villages, demanding payment from each one, which led to Nami being despised by the villagers. Upon seeing Luffy, Nami displayed an unusual coldness, insisting that he should leave promptly. She then returned to Arlong Park. Currently, Arlong was causing havoc in the East China Sea, and he has even bribed a marine colonel named Nezumi. Luffy subsequently met Genzo and Nami's sister, Nojiko. Nojiko revealed Nami's past. Years ago, Nami and Nojiko were adopted by the Navy officer Belmir and enjoyed a modest yet joyful life together. One day, the Arlong pirates occupied Kokoyashi village for colonization and exploitation, demanding hefty sums of money from everyone. However, the impoverished Belmir did not have enough money, as she had spent it all on Nami and Nojiko. Belmir faced Arlong alone and was killed by him.
Nami. No. Nojiko. No. Vi voglio bene, ragazza.
Later, for reasons unknown, Nami joined the Arlong pirates, leading everyone to despise her. Luffy believed that Nami must have a hidden reason for her actions and chose not to leave but rather to seek answers from her. Meanwhile, Nami tells Arlong that she has collected 100 million bell. It turned out that Nami and Arlong had a secret agreement. Arlong had recognized Nami's navigational skills and used the lives of the villagers as leverage to make her draw navigational charts for him, keeping her confined to a room. Nami had made a pact with Arlong that if she collected 100 million bell, she could buy Kokoyashi village from him. This was the reason behind Nami's relentless pursuit of treasure. She carried the burden of her entire hometown on her shoulders since childhood. In fact, Nami cherishes her time with Luffy and the gang so much that if it weren't for her village, she might have stayed in Going Merry. Now that Nami has finally collected 100 million bell, it seemed like she could save her village. Nojiko learned about Nami's years of sacrifice and reconciled with her. However, Arlong had secretly conspired with Captain Nezumi. Colonel Nezumi laughs that Nami is a pirate and sends his men to rob Nami of his money. Nami's despair at the loss of her years of hard work is instantaneous. Nami looked at the tattoo of the fisherman pirates on her arm and stabbed herself to remove the mark of humiliation. Luffy stepped in and stopped Nami, remaining silent. Initially, Nami coldly asked Luffy to leave. However, Luffy didn't speak and looked at Nami seriously. Finally, Nami took off her tough disguise and asked Luffy to help her.
Luffy, aiutami.
Certo che lo farò. Certo che lo farò. Certo che lo farò!
So, Luffy entrusted Nami with his most precious possession, the straw hat, and gathered all his crewmates to confront Arlong.
Andiamo!
Bene.
Meanwhile, Kokoyashi village was engulfed in flames because Arlong sought revenge on Nami by attacking the village. Now, all the villagers knew Nami's story and decided to rise up against Arlong. Luffy tells the villagers that this is their fight. Then he led his 4 companions to kill Arlong's park. On the other hand, Garp also came to this area. He not only called Colonel Nezumi for questioning, but also prepared to capture Luffy. Simultaneously, a major battle was underway in Arlong Park. Buggy took advantage of the chaos to find his own body and promptly made his escape. Usopp faced off against the fishman officer Chu. Usopp dodges the attack by playing dead and defeats him with a gunpowder star. Meanwhile, Zoro and Sanji dealt with a group of fishmen and Karubi. Although they enjoyed their verbal sparring, they were formidable in combat. Sanji defeated Karubi with a stylish series of kicks. On the other hand, Luffy arrives at Nami's former cell and is enraged at what he sees. Luffy even crushed Arlong's weapon. The two of them then engaged in a showdown. Luffy displayed his immense strength by shattering Arlong's teeth with a single punch, but Arlong was able to restore his teeth instantly. At that moment, Luffy began attacking the entire building, aiming to destroy Nami's painful past and Arlong's navigational charts. This sent Arlong into a state of panic. Luffy also unleashed his Gatling laser gun, sending Arlong flying. At this moment, Arlong Park was on the verge of collapse, and Arlong decided to settle the score with Luffy in a final showdown. Luffy, on the other hand, raised his leg high and unleashed his ultimate move, the rubber axe. In the end, Luffy's kick defeated Arlong and demolished Arlong Park. Luffy then appeared amidst the ruins and shouted to Nami,
Nami! Tu sei nostra amica! Noi siamo la tua ciurma!
Arlong's reign of terror finally came to an end, and Kokoyashi village celebrated with a grand feast. Suddenly, Garp and his troops surrounded the area and ordered the arrest of the Straw Hat Pirates. Unexpectedly, Kobe and Helmeppo stepped forward to oppose Garp. They declared Luffy a hero who had saved Kokoyashi village, emphasizing that the real culprits were the Arlong pirates. However, Garp paid no heed to Kobe and even personally called out Luffy, violently confronting his own grandson.
Allora fammi vedere cosa sai fare.
Luffy was no match for Garp at this point, regardless of the attack he used. Garp could easily defeat him with a single punch. Garp seized Luffy and pressured him to give up being a pirate. Even in the face of Garp, Luffy refused to abandon his dream. At that moment, Garp saw shades of Gold, Roger and Luffy, and he burst into laughter, releasing Luffy. It turned out that all of this had been Garp's test for Luffy. Garp let Luffy and his crew go and instead went after the Arlong pirates. Even Marine Colonel Nezumi was knocked down by Nami with a single blow. Finally, Garp told Luffy that from now on, he would have to rely on himself. Luffy responded with a smile, saying that he still had his friends. Satisfied, Garp left Kokoyashi village. The next day Nami said goodbye to Nojiko at Belmir's grave and she left an orange windmill for Belmir. Meanwhile, Luffy met with Kobe, and they remained friends. Kobe presented Luffy with a bounty poster.
Sì! Sì! Sono parecchi barri!
È la taglia più alta nel mare orientale. Sei un ricercato adesso.
È esattamente quello che volevo.
Luffy now had his own wanted poster, with a bounty of 30 million berries, the highest in the East China Sea. Usopp's silhouette appeared in the corner of the wanted poster. Soon, the news of the wanted poster spread throughout the East China Sea. Machino was thrilled for Luffy, while Kaya saw Usopp in the poster. Zeph proudly displayed the wanted poster in the restaurant, and Buggy decided to join forces with Alvida to go after Luffy. Meanwhile, Garp took Kobe and Helmeppo as his apprentices. Acknowledging their pursuit of justice, he also mused that the future might indeed belong to the younger generation. On the other side, the inebriated red-hair pirates unexpectedly received an uninvited guest. Mihawk, who had clashed with Shanks multiple times in the past, had brought Luffy's wanted poster as a special delivery. This makes the red-hair pirates happy to start the party again and invite Mihawk to join them. On Luffy's side, they planted orange trees on the ship for Nami. Nami and the others also prepared a gift for Luffy, the Straw Hat Pirates flag.
Spiega la vela!
Spiego la vela!
And so, the Straw Hat Pirates had their own flag. Luffy set sail on the Going Merry towards the Grand Line. At this point, they proposed to hold a departure ceremony. Everyone placed their feet on a barrel and spoke of their dreams.
Io troverò il Grande Blu.
Io diventerò il re dei pirati.
Io sarò il più forte spadaccino di sempre.
Io disegnerò una mappa del mondo.
Io diventerò un coraggioso guerriero del mare!
Noi non permetteremo a niente di fermarci!
This concludes the first season of the live-action adaptation of One Piece, comprising all 8 episodes. If you enjoyed the One Piece video, remember to like and subscribe. I'm not sure how many stars you would give to this live-action series, but personally, I'm satisfied with its performance. The casting for the main characters generally aligns well with the original, and the scene design and character appearances are faithful to the source material. While there have been some plot adaptations, overall, they fall within an acceptable range. Additionally, the music and special effects are well executed. One of the standout moments was the performance of the Sea King. However, the action scenes could be improved, and there were some dry moments in the emotional aspects. All I can say is, keep up the good work. Finally, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. It truly means a lot to me. Thank you, and let's meet again soon. Goodbye.